Mr. President,
the senator from Delaware.
Thank you. Mr. President, the collapse of Wall Street that precipitated today's economic crisis has many causes, from regulatory failures to recklessness and greed. But before Congress begins to write new rules, one more factor we must examine is criminal behavior by anyone from the local mortgage broker to some of our biggest banks. Let's commit ourselves to enforcing the laws that were on the books and to throwing those who broke them into jail. I'm not prejudging anyone. We may well find that only a small percentage of cases involved outright criminal behavior, and we must take care that our anger does not cloud our judgment. But people know, they know, that if they rob a bank, they'll go to jail. Bankers should know that if they rob people, they'll go to jail too. We have seen anecdotal evidence that mortgage brokers may have fraudulently solicited mortgages or used predatory practices. Bankers may have neglected due diligence in the design and marketing of some mortgage-related products. That is why credit agencies may have been conflicted by the fees they earned from the very bankers whose shaky products they stamped AAA, the highest credit rating. And finally, as the housing bubble burst, banks may have engaged in a widespread failure to disclose material information as they went from supposedly profitable institutions to solvent overnight, leaving investors holding the bag. And where were the lawyers and accountants who were paid to keep an eye on such actions? Was there so much cash around that the professionals who make these deals possible became blind to their duties? Attorney General Eric Holder has emphasized that it's only by drilling down into the records of complicated financial transactions that federal law enforcement officials can understand exactly what happened and investigate the people and firms involved. Unfortunately, right now, the resources are not available to do so. That's why Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Pat Leahy, Senator Chuck Grassley, and I introduced S-386, the Fraud Enforcement and Recovery Act of 2009. This is a bipartisan bill. It provides financial support to the investigative arms of the federal law enforcement regulatory agencies so they can find the crimes that we know have already been committed. It also amends fraud statutes to protect us against those who might be tempted to cheat like this in the future. At a recent hearing, FBI Deputy Director John Pistole testified the very necessary shift of resources to counterterrorism efforts. It was right to shift resources in the FBI to counterterrorism efforts. But this has had a significant impact on the FBI's ability to investigate sophisticated financial crime. Mr. Pistole said, the increasing financial fraud caseload is straining the FBI's limited white-collar crime resources. Currently, the FBI has only 240 agents investigating complex financial fraud. During the savings and loan crisis in the 1980s, the FBI had more than 1,000 agents investigating financial fraud. We must increase dramatically the number and training of FBI agents investigating financial fraud. Mr. Pistole told the committee the FBI is already investigating 530 open corporate fraud investigations, and only 38 of those, only 38, are directly related to the current financial crisis. Again, as Mr. Pistole said, more must be done to protect our country and our economy from those who attempt to enrich themselves. This bill authorizes $155 million a year for hiring fraud prosecutors and investigators at the Justice Department for 2010 and 2011. That amount includes $65 million a year for 190 additional FBI special agents and more than 200 professionals to fight white-collar crime. Mr. President, we know prosecuting bad behavior by itself won't put an end to all bad behavior, but it'll make those people in the boardrooms, at the trading desks, and in the mortgage industry think twice before they look the other way, give way to greed over financial duty, or deal from the bottom of the deck. Mr. President, I believe deeply in the free market economy. I believe deeply in capitalism and the importance of an open financial system. Indeed, I believe our very democracy depends on fair and functioning markets. That is why we simply cannot give a pass to this kind of illegal behavior. The men and women who duped would-be homeowners, who defrauded the American investor, who contributed to an economic crisis of historic proportions, need to be identified, prosecuted, convicted, and thrown in jail. And in cases where the conduct falls out short of criminal, our regulators must also pursue civil cases to force perpetrators to pay back their ill-gotten gains and bar these people from future securities work. Mr. President, I've heard people say prosecutors must tread carefully, that the law is a blunt instrument. They will say that if we turn prosecutors loose on our key financial institutions, the economic repercussions will outweigh any benefits. To that I say, of course we must be judicious, but the law of the land applies to everyone. And when it's pointed at you, the law can always be characterized as a blunt instrument. Mr. President, at the end of the day, this is a test of whether we have one justice system in the country or two. If we don't treat Wall Street firms that defrauded investors of millions of dollars the same way we treat someone who stole $500 from a cash register, then how can we expect our citizens to have any faith in the rule of law? For our economy to work for all Americans, investors must have confidence in the honest and open functioning of our financial markets. Our markets can only flourish when Americans again trust that they are fair, transparent, and accountable to the laws. In closing, I applaud Chairman Leahy and Senator Grassley for their leadership on this issue. I'm proud to join with them in this effort, and I'm hopeful the Judiciary Committee will approve this bill when we take it up on Thursday. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.